Hello and welcome to the 2021 PA UCC Residential Code Update Part 2. My name is Darren Wright and I'm the High Performance Housing Specialist at the Pennsylvania Housing Research Center. The PHRC provides and facilitates education, training, innovation, research, and dissemination to the residential construction industry for the purpose of improving the quality and affordability of housing. Educational programs and publications by the PHRC address a wide range of topics relevant to the home building industry and are designed to reach a diverse audience of builders, code officials, remodelers, architects, developers, engineers, planners, and landscape architects and local government officials, as well as educators to provide professional development and continuing education. Today's presentation builds upon the previous webinar, 2021 PA UC Residential Code Update Part 1. This session will try to dive a little deeper into the implications of the transitions to the portions of the 2021 ICC-based codes that were approved for adoption. It will also dive into some highlights of the new code provisions affecting residential construction. Here are some learning objectives. Review the most efficient ways to find out which code provisions have changed, discuss noteworthy and substantial code provisions, dive a little deeper into various code changes that will affect residential construction, and understanding available resources or best practices that may be impacted by code changes. And how will the code changes be presented? Simple format. I'm referencing the 2021 code changes that is put out by the ICC. Really, the sections of change is provision modified or not adopted. Those are the three things that we go about here. There are some of the changes in the 2021 IRC that were not adopted in Pennsylvania, and I will sort of reference those as we go through. There's different types of changes. We have the addition on a modification or a clarification, change summary, which is this brief description. And if there's a code change, that code language change will be in red, and the PA UCC RAC amendments, which were adopted within Pennsylvania or stricken by Pennsylvania, will be highlighted in orange. And again, today's information is taken directly out of the significant changes to the 2021 IRC codebook. And any additional information I'm pulling for this is coming out of the PA UCC 2021 International Code Adoption, which is the Pennsylvania's adoption of the IRC, or portions of the IRC. The references where this material is taken from. This is broken down into approximately 8 sections. We have administration, building planning, building construction, energy conservation, mechanical, fuel, gas, plumbing, and electrical. We're going to start with administration. I am going to try to move at a pace. This is a lot of information. I'm going to try to simplify it, but to try to keep this webinar within an hour, I will have to move at a little bit of an accelerated pace. Within the administration section, one of the changes is R202, which is the definition of emergency escape and rescue opening. This is really just a clarification of an existing code. The change summaries, definitions for emergency escape and rescue openings and grade 4 openings have been updated for clarification to be consistent with the IBC. Again, the 2021 IRC includes revisions to the emergency escape and rescue provisions, which have been updated for consistency with the IBC, so they're more in line. Key changes involving the clarification of the definitions of the measurement. Now, when it says measuring from the floor, it doesn't say to the window sill, it actually says to the window opening. That's a clarification there. The revision addresses confusion around the reduced opening area for emergency escape and near grade and clarifies that the exception applies only to openings close to grade, not those deeper than 44 inches below grade. These updates aim to make provisions more understandable and applicable. And the definition of a townhouse is another administrative clarification. It changes a revised definition of townhouse or building and a new definition for townhouse unit. Again, a townhouse unit, what they're saying specifically is a building with like a front and a back exposed to the outside. And it will be, the old definition was townhouse and townhouse building were interchangeable. So people got confused and it said the same thing. The new definition clarifies that a townhouse unit refers to the individual single dwelling within a townhouse building, which consists of 3 or more townhouse units. This just ensures consistency across the code. And additionally, the definition of building has been updated to specifically include townhouses along with 1 or 2 family dwellings and accessory structures. Moving into building planning section, story heights. This is a clarification. Again, the change summary, the maximum story height for wood wall framing is 13 feet 7 inches when the exception requirements are met. Okay, the 2021 update restores the 12-foot bearing wall stud height exception without requiring engineering as long as compliance with wall bracing requirements in section R60210 is met. This clarification resolves conflicts with the previous story heights limits and wall bracing provisions while maintaining engineering requirements for taller walls not complying with certain exceptions in section R602.3.1. And the new code also provides specific snow load limits for taller studs in certain regions, ensuring a balance between structural and integrity and safety. Townhouses, R302.2. This is a modification. And R302 has been updated to clarify fire resistance separation requirements for townhouse units. A townhouse is now defined as a building with 3 or more dwelling units, and each unit is called a townhouse unit. Fire separation can either be 2 1-hour rated walls or a common wall with a 1-hour rating and sprinklers, or a 2-hour rating without sprinklers. The common wall must extend to the exterior wall sheathing unless an exception applies, requiring specific blocking materials. Structural independence for separation walls is generally required, but sprinklers can provide an exception. Additionally, water-filled sprinkler piping is now allowed in common walls to reduce installation costs aligning with IBS standards. And here's an image with this. You can have a separation. You can have the separation walls stop at the interior wall, but you do have to, the permitted installation now requires 2 2-inch nominal thickness wood studs as a fire block between those 2 units. 2-family dwelling separation. This is a modification. The prescribed fire resistance rated separation between 2 dwelling units in a single building is not affected by the presence of a lot line. This is just saying there used to be some misconception or confusion. If you had a 2-unit and there was a lot line between there, they weren't treated as a traditional townhouse was. The update code clarifies fire separation requirements for 2-family dwellings, duplexes, regardless of whether a lot line exists between the units. Only a 1-hour fire-resistant rating wall is required. This resolves previous debates with some jurisdictions treat the lot line as required 2 1-hour walls or considered the units as separate family unit dwellings. Okay, R302.5, dwelling garage door opening protection. This is a clarification and it's a addition to the PA UCC. And what we're saying most of this change is related to the doors, which the man door or the pass-through door from the garage into the house now has to have a self-latching equipped with a self-closing or automatic closing device. Excuse me, such as spring-loaded hinges. R303.1, mechanical ventilation. And this is a clarification. And the change summary states a local exhaust system is an acceptable substitution for mechanical ventilation. The 2021 IRC reintroduces the option for a room-based mechanical ventilation system that providing 0.35 air changes per hour, offering like flexibility for additions or remodels. It also clarifies that a local exhaust system such as a kitchen range hood can replace natural ventilation in kitchens to effectively remove cooking pollutants. And this clarification just emphasizes the need for ventilation directly at the source in kitchens, aligning with Chapter 15 provisions. R305.1, ceiling heights. This is really a rack modification is the big one here. It's a change type. It's a modification. The minimum ceiling height is reduced to 6 feet 6 inches under beams spaced at least 36 inches apart. And the ceiling height, the intent of the language in the code is to allow beams to project from the ceiling, such as the base of beams, and at least 6 feet 6 inches above the floor. This was introduced or brought in to help deal with larger manufactured beams that are projecting farther into the living space. This does not affect the basement, which still has a 6'4" ceiling height clearance and for beams and girders and ductworks within the basement. The new exception is a result of concern, like I said, expressed that size of the beams and girders has increased in recent years with the advent of engineered lumber and open floor plans, and that a ceiling height of 7 feet was just not always achievable. And here's just the drawing to clarify that. R308.5.4, glazing in wet surfaces. This is a clarification. The language addressing glazing in walls, enclosures, or fences near tubs, showers, and swimming pools has replaced the word facing with the word adjacent. And this just clarifies that that 60-inch safety zone is not just directly in front of the window, it's within all 60 inches circumference of that window opening. R310.1, emergency escape and rescue opening requirements. And there, within this, there's also a rack modification. Again, the change summary, emergency escape and rescue openings require a clear 36-inch wide path to a public way. Operational requirements have been clarified, and there's an addition to the exceptions. A yard shall not be required to open directly to a public way where the yard opens to an unobstructed path from the yard to the public way. Such a path shall have a width of not less than 36 inches. And the rack modification states properties with infill lots that are sprinklered in accordance with section 2904 and the minimum clear yard size of 80 square feet shall be allowed to have access to the public way provided by a shared easement that is a minimum of 30 inches wide. The 2121 code introduces a new requirement for the path opening so that an escape opening has a clear path from the building out of the property. R310.2, emergency escape and rescue opening. This is a modification. The change summary states emergency escape openings under decks, porches, and cantilevers require a path not less than 36 inches wide. Opening dimensions have been clarified. So the minimum clear opening area of 5.7 square feet and dimensions for emergency escape windows of 20 inches in width and 24 inches in height are now clearly separated. The exception for grade floor openings has been clarified to apply only to openings meeting the new definition of grade floor emergency escape rescue opening. Additionally, the code now measures window opening heights again from the floor to the clear opening, no longer to the sill, eliminating reference to sills. Another change allows emergency escape openings under floor cantilevers, requiring a 36-inch wide path to the yard, along with an existing 36-inch height requirement for paths under decks and porches. And here's just the drawing that's included within that in the provision. R310.5, replacement windows for emergency escape and rescue openings. This is a modification. The change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement additions, and for a change in occupancy. And again, the 2021 IRC reorganizes the clarified provisions for emergency escape rescue openings. R310.5 now focuses on replacement windows at existing dwellings, requiring that replacement windows be no less safe than the existing one and be the largest standard size window that fits within the existing opening. R310.6, this is dwelling additions. This is a modification. The change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency and escape rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, or for a change of occupancy. R310.6 retains requirements for emergency escape openings in new bedrooms and basements and dwelling additions with a new exception allowing a reduced window size in certain cases. And again, the exception has the addition of number 3, an operable window complying with section 310.7.1 shall be acceptable as an emergency escape and rescue opening. R310.7's alterations or repairs of existing basements. Again, this is a modification. The change summary states opening dimensions have been reduced for emergency escape and rescue openings for a basement remodel, basement addition, and for a change of occupancy. And again, R310.7 clarifies that only new sleeping rooms in existing basements require emergency escape opening, and a new exception permits smaller window openings for existing windows in these rooms. R310.7.1, existing emergency escape and rescue openings. This is a modification. And the summary remains the same for all 310.7s. And this further addresses reduced window sizes for changes of occupancy and providing flexibility and emergency escape window openings requirements within specific scenarios, aligning with provisions from the IEBC. And this is just an example. An existing operable window shall provide a minimum net clear opening area 4 square feet. And it gets into some details. A replacement window where such window complies with both of the following is allowed. It has to comply with both. The replacement window meets the size requirements in item 1. And the replacement window is the manufacturer's largest standard size window that will fit within that existing frame or existing rough opening. R312.2.1, window opening heights. This change type is a clarification. The change summary states the revised language clarifies that measurements for determining the need for fall protection are taken to the bottom of the clear opening of the window. And these provisions apply to windows with openings above 72 inches in height, where the minimum opening height above the finished floor is set at 24 inches unless other protection like an opening control device is provided. The measurement method for this requirement has changed over time. Initially, the measurement was taken to the window opening, and in the 2015 edition, they were taken to the window sill. And again, in the 2021 edition, the reference to the windowsill has been removed and the measurements are now taken to the bottom of the clear opening. Smoke alarm locations. This change type is a modification. A new location requirement for smoke alarm addresses high ceilings adjacent to hallways. As you can see here, smoke alarms are still required in in bedrooms, in hallways. But if there is a ceiling height change of greater than 24 inches at the end of that hallway, like into a great room, the new provision states in the hallway and in the room open to the hallway and dwelling units where the ceiling height of a room open to a hallway serving bedrooms exceeds that of the hallway by 24 inches or more, you need to install an additional smoke alarm. R315.2.2, carbon monoxide alarms. This is a modification. Repairs to this change summary states repairs to an existing fuel-fired mechanical system now trigger the retroactive requirements for carbon monoxide alarms. This just stating if you're going to have work done to an existing system, such as a gas or an oil furnace, where carbon monoxide can be produced, you need to make sure there is a carbon monoxide alarm installed. This doesn't go into effect obviously if the system is an electrical system that uses using nothing that can potentially produce carbon monoxide. R320 accessibility. This is a modification. Change summary states the accessibility provisions for live-work units and owner-occupied lodging houses constructed under the IRC are clarified. And then the 2021 IRC update clarifies that the definition for live-work units in townhouses and owner-occupied lodging houses with no more than 5 sleeping units, like a bed and breakfast, removing confusing language. Additionally, the code strengthens the link to the IBC by specifying that the non-residential part of live-work units must be accessible, and where there are 4 or more such units, the dwelling portion must comply with IBC accessibility provisions through multi-level units without elevators, although multi-level units without elevators are still exempt, meaning that in most cases, townhouses are exempt from the accessibility requirements. Storm shelters. This is an addition. Added guidance to the design of storm shelters is placed. This is just saying if you are going to design or build a storm shelter, there are now requirements that you have to follow within the IRC. Footings below light frame construction. This is a modification. And there are changes to the footing sizes now within the new IRC. They are generally a little bit smaller. So as you can see here in the new table states, like say 1-story plus basement used to be 18 by 6, now it's 16 by 6. R406.2 foundation waterproofing. This change type is a deletion. Change summary: 6 mil polychloride and vinyl polyethylene fabrics are removed from the list of approved waterproofing materials. They are being removed because they are more prone to damage during the backfill process than the other types of basement waterproofing. R506.2.3 was a change in the IRC, but the rack modification states it's keeping the vapor barrier underneath the slab remains at 6 mil, even though in the 2021 code book had upped that minimum to 10 mil. So again, Pennsylvania is remaining at a 6 mil polyethylene or approved vapor retarder under your slab in your basement. R507 deck loads. I'm going to go through this, but I want to let everybody know that this January, the PHRC Chris Hine will be giving a presentation on deck design and deck details. You will be able to, if you're interested in getting into this section a little bit more in depth, I would really highly recommend attending his webinar or referencing back to his webinar if this is a later date that you're seeing this, to get more detail in deck design and the mathematics within the deck design. Deck loads is a modification. Deck design is now based on live and snow loads. The 2021 IRC updates deck design provisions to account for areas with higher ground snow loads. So there's going to be the traditional 40 pounds per square foot live load, but there's going to be an additional 3 more, 50, 60, and 70. I'm not sure if we have a lot of regions within Pennsylvania that exceed 40 PSF, but you're going to have to change. This is going to be jurisdictional based to your jurisdiction. And if you're in one of the northern tier counties, you're going to want to check that and see what your snow load rating is or for your region. Deck footings, again, this is a modification. Deck clarifications are made for freestanding deck footings, exceptions in tributary areas of 5 PSF, and an area of 5 PSF is added to the deck footing size table. Again, this is clarifies footing exceptions for freestanding decks, joists supporting directly on grade are no longer required footings, and small decks low to the ground can use concrete piers to support deck joists without the need of beams and posts. So you're no longer required to have a footing on smaller decks. And it states here in the exceptions, footing shall not be required for freestanding decks that meet the following criteria, and you have to meet all of these criteria. The joists bear directly on precast concrete pier blocks at grade without support by beams or posts. The deck area does not exceed 200 square feet, and the walking surface area is not more than 20 inches above grade at any point within 36 inches measured horizontally from the edge. Deck post, this is a modification. Change summary states the deck post height table is expanded by adding the tributary area supported by a post and wood species for the determination of maximum post height. And this exception basically expands and allows 4x4 and 4x6 posts to support greater heights. And I think with the maximum post height now reaching 14 feet, with an 8x8 minimum nominal dimension or a maximum tributary area of 20 square feet. And again, for decks with 20 PSF live load, certain wood species such as southern yellow pine, Douglas fir, etc., with 6x6 minimum dimensions can support the 14-foot height. And again, this table also brings into account the 50, 60, and 70 PSF ground snow loads. Deck beams is a modification. The deck beam span table is split into multiple tables, providing spans for given deck live or snow loads, single and multi-ply spans, as well as options for support of cantilever deck joists are listed. And again, these tables now list single-ply spans for all wood species with multi-ply span options still available for each species. So now there is an option for a single ply when you're doing your deck beams. For shorter joist cantilevers or no cantilevers, table 507.55 can be used to calculate the effective joist span, allowing the beam's maximum span to increase. As you can see here, you just want to pay attention to the species, and you can see up there now you can have 1 2x6, and it gives 1 2x8, as well as multiply different options for beams. And again, the webinar presented by Chris this January 14th will dive deeper into the mathematics that you're seeing here on the screen. And if you're interested in getting more familiar with deck design and calculations, please go to his or follow along with his webinar. R507.6, deck joists. Again, this change type is a modification. Change summary, deck joist options are added for decks with large ground snow loads. Cantilever spans are now specifically based on maximum joist spans. Okay, our 507.6, which previously caused confusion regarding cantilever lengths for deck joists. In the 2018 IRC, cantilever limits were based on joist spacing and required designers to check both the maximum cantilever length and the limit of 1/4 of the joist span, which was often unclear. The new table uses backspan to define the actual joist span, making the maximum cantilever length more intuitive. The table now lists a maximum joist span based on on-center spacing and follows the cantilever length. And for example, a southern yellow pine 2x6, which spans 6 feet. As you can see here, you now have a cantilever length of up to 18 inches. R507.7 decking. This is a modification. The wood decking table is updated to show a maximum on-center joist spacing for a single and multi-span configurations. In the 2021 update, table R507.7, which addresses the maximum joist spacing for decking, particularly for 2-inch nominal wood decking material. The previous 2018 RSA was conservative, recommending a maximum span of 16 inches, whereas the American Lumber Standard Committee decking policy allows for a span up to 24 inches for certain 2-inch nominal material. The updated table retains a conservative baseline, but offers a greater flexibility for designers and manufacturers by considering whether decking spans 2 or more joists. And R507.10, exterior guards. This is a new addition. The change summary specific requirements for deck guards are added. So just the new provisions for constructing exterior guards on decks, which were not required in the 2018 edition. The new rules emphasize that deck guards must meet the load requirements of table R301.5, ensuring they could withstand up to 200 pounds of force. And additionally, you still have requirements for how this is connected to the deck system, using blocking or other like Simpson type materials. R609.4.1, garage doors. This is an addition. This is a simple one. All garage doors must have a permanent label identifying wind pressure ratings and other information affixed to it. R702.7, vapor retarders. This is a modification. The change summary states the vapor retarder section is reorganized for clarity and ease of use. The 2021 IRC includes revised provisions for vapor retarders in wall assemblies to prevent water accumulation and moisture-related issues. Walls must have a water-resistant barrier behind the exterior cladding, a WRB, to drain away any water that enters the vapor retarder on the interior side, to resist condensation from the building interior. Historically, vapor retarders were required on the warm in winter side of exterior walls, but research has shown this is unnecessary in warmer climates. Therefore, the IRC now specifies that a vapor retarder to be installed on the interior side of a building thermal envelope in specific climate zones. And again, you want to be familiar with what zone you're in. Pennsylvania's climate zone is changing. We will no longer have, when this goes into effect, climate zone 6. It would all be climate zones 4 and 5, marine 4, 4, and 5. Water resistant barriers. This is R703.2. This is specifically a rack modification. The 2020, they're basically, the Pennsylvania rack is implementing a language similar to the 2024 IRC, where basically you can see here where water resistant barrier also function as a component of the continuous air barrier. The water resistant barrier shall be installed as an air barrier in accordance with section N1102.5.1.1. And the change is the third change, foam plastic insulating sheathing, water resistant barrier systems complying with section R 703.1.1 and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions. So again, we are moving closer to the 2024 IRC in Pennsylvania with R 703.2. And this just states water resistant barriers shall not be required in unconditioned detached sheds, playhouses, and other similar accessory structures, provided all the following requirements are met. R704 soffits. This, again, the rack modification is pretty simple. It's just emphasizing or clarifying that when they're referencing soffits, that they are exterior soffits. And one of the big change type here is to make it more simple, obviously the rack modification, they're adding aluminum, but the big change is now soffits are going to have to be fastened at both ends with the appropriate fastener. So again, this code change is basically the addition of 2 fasteners on either end of the soffit. R802, wood roof framing. This also includes a rack modification. The change type is a modification. The change summary states revised provisions clarify ridge beam and ceiling joist requirements. The only rack modification is they added the word girder at the end of the paragraph there. In the 2021 IRC clarifies requirements for connecting rafters and ceiling joists to prevent rafter thrust, where roof loads push exterior bearing walls outward. The section emphasizes the importance of a continuous tie across the lower portion of the rafter achieved using ceiling joists or rafter or collar ties to maintain the structural stability of the roof triangle. When ceiling joists or rafter ties are absent, or if ceiling joists are positioned higher in the attic or perpendicular to the rafters, ties must comply with section 802.5.2 to resist forced thrust. For scenarios like cathedral ceilings where ceiling joists are missing, the code requires either a properly designed tie or the installation of a ridge beam engineered to support the rafter at the peak. These provisions ensure structural integrity and prevent outward movement under roof loads. R802.6, rafter and ceiling joist bearing. This change type is a modification. Change summary states text is added to clarify when a ridge board connection is sufficient for bearing. And again, the 2021 IRC clarifies the requirement for bearing areas for rafters at their top ends. The section R802.6 specifies that rafters and ceiling joists must have at least 1.5 inches of bearing on wood or metal. This ensures proper support where components meet horizontal surfaces like top plates or beams. In rafter systems with collar ties at the top and continuous ties at the bottom, gravity forces are transferred downward while horizontal bearing forces act at the rafter tops near the ridge beam. These updates help ensure structural stability and load distribution. Moving into energy, mechanical, and electrical plumbing, significant changes. R1102.4.6, electrical and communication outlet boxes. This is an addition. The change summary states electrical and communication outlet boxes installed in the building thermal envelope must be sealed, tested, and marked for compliance with the reference standards. Previously, table R1102.4.1.1 allowed either an air barrier behind the box for on-site air sealing. The updated section mandates the use of air-sealed boxes that meet prescribed standards and testing criteria, eliminating reliance on field-applied sealing methods like insulation or caulk. These air-sealed boxes must be tested, marked for compliance, and installed per the manufacturer instructions, ensuring consistent and effective air sealing in thermal envelope. This is especially important wherever your air barrier lies. If you have an air barrier on the interior side where you're using your drywall as your air barrier, this is especially important. If your air barrier is on the exterior, say you're sheathing as an air barrier, obviously the electrical boxes that penetrating that need to be properly air sealed as well. On N1104.1 lighting, this is not adopted by the RAC. This is a change that was not adopted within Pennsylvania. N1106 and N1106.2 energy rating index. This change type is a modification. The change summary states the new table lists the requirements associated with the energy rating index compliance path. ERI values have been lowered to improve energy efficiency. Again, the ERI is a scoring system benchmarked at 100, representing the energy use of the 2006 IECC reference design, with lower scores indicating a greater efficiency. a score of 0 represents a net zero energy building. The 2021 code restructures this section by to clarify requirements, elements, and confusing mandatory and prescriptive labels, and consolidates all ERI related requirements into section N1106. New tables provide detailed provisions and updated ERI target scores, restoring the more stringent benchmarks from the 2015 IECC. Additionally, the new provision in section N1101.13.5 requires an ERI value of at least 5% lower than the 2021 targets, making the ERI path significantly more rigorous than the compliance methods. These changes aim to enhance clarity and derive improved energy efficiency in residential buildings. N1101.13.5, additional energy efficiencies. This was not adopted in Pennsylvania, so this is a section that was not adopted per the RAC report. N1108.1, scope. This is just a simple RAC modification. It just strikes out in accordance with section N1101.13.5, obviously because we have not adopted that section. And again, this is a continuation of that, N1108.2. And again, Pennsylvania is not in compliance with that section because we are not adopting that. This modified language leaves the provisions in the code but are no longer mandatory. They can now be, they're just a guide for increased energy efficiency. We will move into mechanical. M1505 balanced ventilation system credit. This is a modification. The new code now allows a 30% reduction in the mechanical ventilation airflow rate for a balanced ventilation system. The 2021 code introduces a provision that recognizes the superior performance of balanced mechanical ventilation systems compared to unbalanced systems. These provisions allow for reduced airflow requirements in balanced systems, acknowledging their efficiencies, providing equivalent ventilation with lower airflow. The credit for reduced airflow is based on a simplified version of the ASHRAE 62.2-216 equation 4.2, which adjusts ventilation flow rates according to factors like airflow leakage, building height, and climate zone. To simplify the application, the code uses a standard factor for typical new single-family homes with 1 or 3 stories, assuming slightly tighter air leakage than the maximum allowed under energy efficiency provisions. Additionally, ensure exhaust fans meet the minimum requirements of the 2015 code introduced table M1504.2 for prescriptive duct sizing, and a footnote in table 1505.4.4 aligns the airflow rate and duct sizing requirements for consistency. M1802.4, block vent switch for oil-fired appliances. This is an addition. Change summary states an additional safety device for oil-fired appliances has been updated to be consistent with what is required for some gas appliances. While block vent switches have existed, they were not previously required by code. The new code mandates that they're used for oil-fired appliances such as furnaces that vent to masonry chimneys, factory-built chimneys, or type L vents, which are susceptible to blockage from debris, animal nesting, deteriorated materials, etc. These switches just detect spillage or blockage and will shut off the appliance, which is producing the carbon monoxide. G2403, definitions of point of delivery and service meter assembly. This change type is a modification. Revisions to the definition clarify the portions of the gas piping system regulated by the service utility and the portions regulated by the IRC fuel gas provisions downstream of the point of delivery. What they're doing here is just clarifying what falls under the IRC and what falls back on the utility company or Department of Transportation. And the point of delivery now is being specified after the meter, between the meter and the building entrance into the building, and then now allows for a system shutoff to be installed between the point of delivery and, I mean, after the point of delivery and where the gas enters the building. This is for maintenance issues that this can be controlled by the homeowner or anybody coming to work on a furnace or some other appliances that uses that gas. G2414.8.3, threaded joint sealant. This is a modification. Change summary states, thread joint sealants are now required for assembling threaded joints in gas piping. The code previously addressed pipe thread compounds, stating that when used, they would resist any chemical constituents of the gases. And until now, the code has not required the use of thread sealants on threaded joints. Sealing components must be made of material that does not harden over time, so it remains effective and so that the pipe joints can be disassembled when necessary. The thread sealant must be compatible with the material used for the piping and resistant to the gases within that piping. G2439.5, makeup air for dryer installed in closet. This is the clarification. The change summary states the requirement for a transfer opening for supplying makeup air to a closet designed for a gas dryer has been moved into a separate section. This is saying now they're being more specific. If you design and build a closet that is specific for installing a gas dryer, you have to supply makeup air to that closet. G2447.2, commercial cooking appliances prohibited. This is a modification. Change summary states the exception allowing a commercial cooking appliances in a dwelling unit when the installation is designed by an engineer has been removed from the code. Basically stating you can no longer install commercial grade appliances within a residential structure, even if it is designed by an engineer. Moving on into plumbing. P2503.5.1, drain, waste, and vent system testing. This is a modification. The change summary states the head pressure for a water test of drain, waste, vent system has increased from 5 to 10 feet. Air vacuum testing is now permitted for plastic drain wet DWV systems. Obviously stating, so now the vent stack height is now 10 feet, but they've added the vacuum test. This portion of the test was added. I think this is going to be helpful, especially in areas where it is extremely cold. People are concerned about filling these systems with water if you're in freezing temperatures. So you now have an option of using a vacuum system to test your drain waste vent system. P2708.4, shower and bathtub control valves. This is a clarification. The code now addresses field adjustment and access to shower control valves. Lower flow shower heads need to be compatible with control mixing valves. Excuse me. So they're stating now is the mixing valve pressure has to be in alignment with the flow rate. The flow rate of both the valve and the shower head have to be compatible or the same. And you now need to provide access to the control valve. And additionally, the water temperature limiting device required by this section shall be equipped with a means to limit the maximum temperature to 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and where adjustable shall be field adjusted in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions, so that we want to make sure the temperature does not exceed 120 degrees. and you have to have access, must be provided to this water temperature limiting device. There is an exception. Access is not required for non-adjustable water temperature limiting devices that conform to ASSE 1070 and are integral with a fixture fitting, providing that the fixture fitting itself can be accessed or replaced. So if there is a temperature limiting system within the mixer itself, that is what they're talking about here. But you still need access to the mixing valve itself. P 2905.3, length of hot water piping fixtures. This was not adopted by the RAC for Pennsylvania, so we don't need to worry about that. Electrical, emergency service disconnect. This is an addition. Emergency service disconnect is required in a readily accessible outdoor location. The 2021 code introduces a new requirement for an emergency disconnect to be located at a readily accessible point outside of the building. So what they're showing here is you now need emergency disconnect between the meter and where your service enters your building. This is obviously for a safety, especially for fire companies and emergency service workers coming to do work or to respond to a fire, being able to shut off or disconnect the power to the building as quickly as possible and as easily as possible. E3606.5, service surge protection devices. This is an addition. A surge service protection device is now required at the service panel. And this is an addition. You know, we're all familiar with surge protection devices. We see them on power strips and other things. With how complicated and how most appliances within a home now have some sort of motherboard or computer system within. We're talking about washer and dryers, stoves, microwaves, everything almost within that realm is now susceptible to power surges. So now there is a requirement for a whole house surge protective device to be installed. E3703.4, bathroom branch circuits. This is just a clarification. Change summary states only the required bathroom receptacle outlets or those servicing a countertop need to be on a dedicated 20 amp bathroom circuit. So if it's a required outlet within the bathroom or an outlet within the countertop, that has to be on a dedicated 20 amp circuit. If you have, for any other reason, another outlet in there, maybe for hooking up a vacuum or something, that does not to be required onto that 20 amp outlet. It can be on its own 15 amp outlet. E3703.5, garage branch circuits. This is a modification. The change summary states only the required receptacle outlets beyond the 20 amp dedicated circuit for garages. And again, there is required outlets within your garage. Anything outside of those required outlets do not need to be on this 20 amp dedicated circuit for your garage. Say you have an outlet for a garage door opener, or you want to put an outlet near the door to run a vacuum, or for some to run extension cords outside, they can be on a separate 15 amp circuit. E3901.4, kitchen countertops and work surface receptacles. This was not adopted by the RAC. E3902, GFCI protection for 250 volt receptacles. This is a modification. Change summary states ground fault circuit interrupter protection is required for up to 250 volt receptacles in the areas previously identified as requiring GFCI protection for 125 volt receptacles. The 20 amp limitation has been removed. So basically anywhere previously where a GFCI protection was required due to a damp or a wet location, that was not a requirement for a 30 amp, say in a laundry room. Now that 30 amp outlet within that laundry room has to be GFCI protected. E3902.5, GFCI protection for basement receptacles. This is a modification. The requirement for GFCI protection in unfinished basement areas has been expanded to include all basement areas. That's basically stating where you used to not have to have GFCI outlets in finished portions of the basement. Those are now GFCI, not outlets, but GFCI protection is required for all basement outlets. E3902.10, GFCI protection for indoor damp and wet locations. This is an addition. Change summary states GFCI protection is now required for indoor damp and wet locations not included in other specific locations requiring GFCI protection. The IRC requires GFCI protection for receptacles in locations prone to damp or wet surfaces, which are more conductive and have an increased risk of electrical shock. These areas can include spaces like garages, basements, bathrooms, laundry rooms, etc. The new language broadens GFCI requirements to encompass additional damp or wet areas, such as mudrooms with direct outdoor access or pet bathing or grooming areas. While this expands safety measures, it also represents interpretation issues or challenges for building officials who have to assess these areas for potential shock. So I would suggest if you have concerns or questions whether or not an area does fall within this, to contact your local building official. So references for this, obviously we're taking out of the local and for the code books. The most recent being the 2021 IRC and significant changes to the IRC code. Again, if you have any questions about this presentation, you can reach out to me. My email is dtw153@psu.edu. You can also reach out to any member of the PHRC team. And again, it's phrc.edu. PHRC at Penn State. If you put that into your search bar, our website should pop up. Thank you for attending the PA UCC Residential Code Update Part 2.